Yun, nakapag-live stream na, nakita ko.
Okay na, yun, nagawa ko na.
Ano?
May mga pipiliin pala, so pwedeng sa page.
Sa page ng PixPro.
So Sheila Vasquez siya, pero I streamed it on the PixPro page.
Okay, good. Teka lang.
Okay, admit na natin sila.
Okay, we can admit na.
Stress drill on to
Nakikita nyo na dun sa Facebook Live. Wait,
I-check ko ngayon. Hi, Sunny. Sorry we're figuring out the live streaming.
Yan na, nakita ko na PixPro is now. Okay, good. Hi, Sunny, SG. Good afternoon.
Lumia, go ahead.
Hello.
Yes, we have tama ba? Jonah Ray, di maunahan. We also have Lorenzo Anda. Hello, good afternoon. Vincent Santos is also watching.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. So we have roughly 8 minutes to start.
May naririnig ko. May naririnig kayo?
Yes.
And to have everyone
May naririnig akong background.
Is anyone playing previous videos ba?
Yeah, nawala. Nawala siya ngayon.
Yan, okay na.
Okay, very good. Sunny, okay na kayo ni SG? Dito na kayo?
Yeah.
Hi, Amin.
We're here. I'm just trying to figure out how I can put the background.
Okay.
Just few minutes. I think SG is
The
there. Yeah.
The video,
I think-
di ba merong video sa baba? Tapos you could choose your virtual background.
Okay, background. Hold on, give me a second. I'm using a web-based BP Adams. So,
What do you mean?
You don't have the Zoom app.
no,
Wala
no.
kang Zoom app. Okay. Sa Zoom app siya na Hindi ko sure dun sa web-based eh. There. ISG.
Hi.
So mine is different. I cannot.
It's okay. Just blur your background na lang siguro saan. Okay lang naman.
Boss, wala ring option for me to. Let me see. Weird Iba. I'll try to turn on. Can you see me? So iba yung background ko.
Yung background mo is parang space.
Yeah, tapos circle lang, no?
Yep.
I think that's the limitation kapag browser based.
Yep.
I'll try to figure out that. Worst case, I'll just stay with this one. Okay lang.
Yeah, sure. No worries.
So you guys got a question I sent just now?
Yes, I got it.
Okay, so we should be good to go.
Okay. So we could hi BP Sheila. There's BP Sheila. Oh, there's Vice Chair.
Vice Chair is here as
Good afternoon.
well.
Hello, good afternoon.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Hi, Sunny. Hi, SG.
Hi.
SG.
Hello.
Sir Vice Chair.
Hello, Miss BP Sheila.
Nasa San Francisco si Sunny.
Oo nga eh.
I'm using the browser base, so I don't have the app, I'm sorry. So I cannot upload the background.
It's okay. So 1 minute, then we can start.
Yeah, we can start.
Yes. Good afternoon muna to everyone. Hi, Jules.
Siyempre, yung lagi nating masugid na tagapanood sa 7 Hosting, nandito rin. Good afternoon, bro. Okay ba? Nag-enjoy ka ba sa Gigamon training last week?
Yes, salamat daw. Salamat.
Salamat sa mga umaten. Yeah. Oh. So hopefully you gain new knowledge, no? Doon sa Gigamon training na ginawa ng Pix Pro last February 24. Pumapasok na yung mga viewers natin. So let's just wait for a couple of minutes to start our session for today.
Very interesting yung ano natin, no? Mr. BP Alex, no? Attack
Yes.
surface management or external attack surface management. I think hindi lahat ng even some of the practitioners siguro sa cybersecurity, no, bago ito. Kaya this is going to be a very exciting topic for today, no? Para malaman ng ating kapixprohan what attack surface management is all about.
Yeah, agree, BPO ka. Kami rin, I mean, in our role sa cybersecurity. Actually, we've been doing this, no, but we are doing it on a manual basis. So interested din ako ngayon na meron palang automation in terms of attack surface. Kasi kami, we're mapping manually what are the attack entry points that we have in our infrastructure. Then, of course, we are using some comparison, for example, with the meter. So we are mapping it against the tactics, techniques, and procedures. And then, knowing that attack entry point and the tactic, technique, and procedure, we are devising way on how we could protect our environment. Siguro we could start na, BP Mia, no? So it's 5 o'clock na. So again, good afternoon mga Kapix Pro, no? It's Friday once again, so we welcome you to another exciting session of Kwentuhang Cybersecurity. So BP Mia.
Yes, good afternoon everyone. It's March na pala, no? Ang bilis.
Oo nga.
So patapos na yung first quarter of the year. And as Vice Chair mentioned, we have a very interesting topic today. I myself, I'm excited to learn something new from our guest speaker for today. So please allow me to introduce our guest speaker. So, but by the way, we have Sunny also joining us. Hi Sunny, thank you for joining us and for hosting this session. So we have also SG. Let's just call him SG, but his real name is Sugim Go. SG is one of the leading strategic solutions architects in the Asia-Pacific region for Mandiant. And he serves as the subject matter expert in the field of cyber threat intelligence involving the government sector, large enterprises in the private sector, across verticals such as financial institutions, telcos, energy, and utilities. SG has more than 20 years of IT security experience working for several companies in the US, Malaysia, and Singapore in the area of threat insights for malware detection, IT security consulting, IT security system integration, and running a 24/7 security operations center. Prior to joining Mandiant, SG was the cyber defense consultant in Asia Pacific for BAE Systems. He was actively involved in engagements with financial institutes, consulting on best practices and providing insight into the ever-changing cyber threat landscape, focusing on cyber threat intelligence and threat analytics. And before his role in BAE Systems, SG was the security advisor who represented F-Secure in the Asia Pacific region, where he was actively involved in activities to raise public awareness of the IT threat landscape, giving talks and conferences in the latest threat vectors and attack techniques. As an evangelist, he also responded to the media as the spokesperson on the latest virus outbreaks and trends. SG also held management and technical roles as he was the manager of the Threat Insight team in the F-Secure Response Labs in Kuala Lumpur. He led the team which handles file reputation, vulnerability, web reputation, and anti-phishing services to focus on proactive response in approaching upcoming issues in the threat landscape. So, that's SG, and SG, we'd like to thank you for what you do. Thank you for being of service to the cybersecurity community and
Uh,
being an evangelist. The
yep.
floor is yours, SG.
Thank you, VP Mia. So, SG, you may start now your sharing of your topic for today, and then we could discuss later more in deeper sense the attack surface management. Okay, SG, take it away.
Right. Thank you very much. Thank you for the introduction, and definitely very happy today to be able to share something about attack surface management to the whole group here. Again, thanks for the invitation. Definitely, I want to have myself. I'm based in Singapore, right? Covering the whole APJ region. So let's jump straight to the presentation. And of course, we'll have my colleague here as well, Sunny. He will also just quickly share a little bit about Mandiant as well. Before I get started, basically what we do and who we are. So Sunny, you want to do a quick intro?
Yeah, Will. Thanks. Thanks, SG. I was actually going to introduce you, but good thing that BP Me has done a very good job in doing the introduction. So I'll just do a brief introduction of our company, Mandiant. As most people would know, Mandiant is more known for our threat intel and incident response and red teams. So that's actually the core business of Mandiant. However, during the divestiture of Mandiant and FireEye this year, we've started, we kind of changed our business model. And we're now focusing on not just on consulting, but we also have our SaaS platform as well. Mandiant's key focus is really helping every organization secure from cyber threats and be confident in their readiness. So that's actually our mission. And we believe while effective security should be not just be based on security controls alone, but also on the expertise and intelligence behind them. So therefore, our approach is really more on how we can scale our expertise and intelligence in automated solutions delivered through the Mandiant Advantage SaaS platform. Hence the slide that you're seeing now. And for today's session, and I'd like again to thank Mr. Chairman and the rest of the members for giving us giving us an opportunity to do some mind share, give some insights in terms of what are the other best practices around securing your IT environment. So we will focus for this topic will be more on attack surface, and hopefully we'll be able to share with you how we put all these things together that would allow us to aid our customers and partners on how to develop the right methodology or even framework suited for that environment. So it's going to be an interactive session, and we encourage everyone to just keep posting any questions. So we will, we'll get the opportunity to learn from you as well. So with that, I'd like to give it back to SG. You can start. Take it away,
Thank
please.
you. Thank you, Sunny. Thank you, Sunny, for that introduction of Mandiant.
Yes, sir.
All right. Thanks again, Sonny. So without further ado, I'm just going to jump straight to the meat of this presentation. So of course, right here, it's just a quick overview of what, Mandiant is covering in terms of our new services, from automated defense all the way to attack surface, right? But then again, attack surface today has, is such a big topic, basically so much have changed, right? So as you can see, the evolution of IT since especially the last couple of years, it has especially changed a lot. The number one being, as I mentioned here, these are the four big changes I think have really affected how we work and how we are securing our enterprises, right? So first of all, cloud today is the new normal, right? Because so many of us are all moving to the cloud environment organization, they're like, hey, you know what, it's too much to host and maintain by myself, given the uptime and maintenance. So a lot of the price and adoption of cloud is also getting very quickly, very easily as well. So what this means is, all these services as they move to the cloud, it's getting harder to maintain it, right? I mean, back 10 years ago when even 10 years ago or 15 years ago when I was, doing all this IT security work, all the time, we see our data because it's in our data center, right? It sits there, we know that the things are there. But when things move towards the cloud, it's getting harder to control because this is all beyond all your perimeter already, right? So when new instances are spun up, they're too easy to spin up, it's too hard to keep track of. And sometimes because of this, the challenge will be like, how do you know what is out there already? All right. So as you can see, a lot of all this, the cloud is a new normal. So keeping track of that is really definitely very difficult. Now, the other part is basically, I know we kind of put that software that hit the world, right? Today, there are more code than ever before, right? And having said that, there's all this, explosion of like different, cloud services, SaaS, all these containers. Basically, like, you have AWS, you have all different kind of hosting services out there that's hosting the code. It's also getting very difficult to tell where the guys are putting their, right? Like, for example, some programmers or some developer may just put some testing code into GitHub, or maybe they're crowdsourcing for something else. So keeping track of that is definitely very difficult. And this is how I think software development is taking, the world as well, right? Because it's no longer just one guy sitting at home or sitting in an office doing it anymore. It's basically shared among coders from around the world. And then, of course, the third one would be basically work from home. And of course, now we are, just past the 2-year anniversary of, COVID hit. That has literally changed the way we work today, right? We are no longer sitting in the office anymore. Working from home is by de facto standard that, that's the first thing that, a lot of the tech companies are doing, and many companies are doing that. And because of that, by being remote, where the tools are being kept for the employees, this is getting very hard to control as well, right? And that also means more VPN services, all these services that will be offered out to the outside world as well. And then last but not least here, I also want to talk about the consumerization of tech, right? Today, because there's so many things that revolve around technology, such as, the use of mobile phones, applications, mobile apps, right? Storage, and also all these SaaS and cloud instances. It is way too easy to spin something up. Let's say, for example, there's a new feature that we are launching, right? A company is launching. Maybe the marketing is launching something new. It's so easy to just spin out, hey, we'll put this instance here for this promotion. And that, because it's so easy, it's getting too difficult to track, right? And from the accounting point of view of assets, for the organization is really, really become a big challenge today. All right. So again, just to set the stage, these are some of the key things that we are running into today. Now, with all that said, then comes one of the key challenges that we have today, right? Because as I mentioned here, we don't know and what we don't know, right? Today, what we have is we are very familiar with everything within our perimeter, right? This is our wall. We know what is inside, right? Just like your home, right? You have your fence, you have all your personal belongings that you own inside the fence, right? And inside your house. So this kind of thing is easy to account for, right? You know that they belong to you. But it's getting harder when you start going out and you start, maybe, outsourcing services to keep your things outside your house. Then you one day will remember, hey, when did I store my things in the storage, right? So the same thing applies to in the IT organization as well. So in this case, one of the key challenges they have today is unmanaged assets and applications, right? The IT guy is working full-time trying to figure out what they have to scan, what they have to pen test, but then that is only what they know, right? What they don't know is also outside there as well. So this is one of the key challenges, right? They always struggle to see what belongs to them, because not all the time these things get reported in the organization. And then, of course, the other challenge they have today is basically, I know vulnerability assessment today are done in most of the organization, right? Where they cover on a scheduled basis to look for gaps, right? Do some vulnerability assessment, scan the network, scan the host, make sure that you're covered. But again, this is what you know, right? What if there are some instances out there outside of your perimeter that you are not aware of, right? So those are also became a challenging item, like how do I know, what to scan when I don't know they exist. And then, of course, we talked about that earlier. The enterprise today now is very cloud service centric, right? A lot of the services are offered as a SaaS service, or they, host it in the cloud, which makes it even harder. And then, because of that, the attack surface, your surface of coverage becomes larger and larger with all these cloud services. Another challenge they have today is basically on the acquisition side, right? Nowadays, businesses buying businesses for acquisition and spinning up subsidiaries are also way too common as well, right? Because of that, it's also becoming a challenge to manage. Or if, let's say, an organization today, I want to buy another business, right? How I wouldn't know what they have exposed outside that they do not know about, right? Let's say I want to buy this company and they say, hey, I have 1,000 assets that I know of, but then that's what they know. There might be many assets that's outside of the perimeter that they have no idea, right? So I want to be aware of that as well, right? You're talking about all this third party. So the surface is nonstop, increasing, continuously expanding over time. Now, even like Forrester, right? What they actually have said is, basically on average, we actually can, discovered 30% or more cloud assets than most they really know, right? So let's say typically in an organization, they think that, oh, I know I have 1,000 assets that I know of, but we're pretty sure that, on average, there could be 300 more that they don't know about that's sitting outside, all right? So that's how we found that this is, in fact, a Forrester research done as close as just a month or two ago. So if you look at the statistics-wise, right, it is actually also, the challenge is very huge, right? So on an average enterprise today, right, unique assets across, could be 40,000 or more on average. I know you might say, hey, I don't have 40,000 employees in my organization. That's correct. However, assets that could be one, it's not one user and one asset, right? It's basically one person who have multiple assets that the company owns. And so because of this, 40,000 is a lot. It's not a lot to begin with. Applications as well, typically a lot of them are uniquely used, more than 600 of them. And then again, acquisition is always increasing. And of course, the critical exposure is definitely a lot more as well. So based on this, typically an attack surface management tool should be able to cover many data sources, cover different kind of assets, in terms of technologies as well. How much can we cover, and all the vulnerabilities as well. All right. So the number is just increasing, very huge. All right. There is always going to be a definition about what ASM is, right? Mandiant define ASM quite similarly to what Gartner says. So today, Gartner, they basically call attack surface management a process, the technology, and professional services used to deploy to find external facing enterprise assets and systems that may have a vulnerability, right? So basically, end of story is an ASM basically is a tool or the process that you need to find anything that is outside of your network, right? That may have an issue with it. So this is basically what an ASM do. First you want to scout it before anybody find it. So if you go back to my initial tagline, looking at yourself through the eyes of an attacker, this is exactly true, right? what an ASM find is basically what your adversary can find as well, right? If this information are sitting outside, they are actually not confidential, right? They are literally public. They are outside sitting there, right? So if the bad guys can find it, we can find it, so as anybody else, right? However, it is important that you find it first before the bad guy does, right? So you can rectify them and account for these things. So that is the key to success with ASM tool. Now, what are some of the core functions, right? Like what would an ASM do? Like, you know, in the real world, is it just finding it? You know, what would a ASM do for you to make your you know, IT life easier, right? So first of all, you know, the core function for an ASM is to find things, basically auto-discover, right? The key is you need to find as many things as possible that you do not know about, but is relevant and very likely belongs to me. So that is the number one job of an ASM, auto-discover stuff. And then after that, the ASM is supposed to find vulnerabilities with all these discovered assets, okay? Now, vulnerability in this context, it does not only refer to the CVE. That's why I kind of put an asterisk here, right? Vulnerability means issue. So the vulnerability in this context extend more than just the CVE, for example. I know tech guys like us and some of you guys might think, hey, you know, the first thing you relate vulnerability to in the IT world is CVE, right? I want to know, you know, is there an exploit for this vulnerability? Is there an exploit for that vulnerability for the host? But what in ASM term means is we're actually finding issues that are relevant, right? And these issues extend more than just CVE. It could be a misconfigured box. The issue could also be an asset that's out there that maybe you have decommissioned long time ago, but it is still outside there, right? So all these like decommissioned items, maybe forgotten servers, maybe an FTP server you set up for engineering or testing use that might be sitting out there, and it's still sitting out there because, you know, somehow during, you know, when you go live, you just forgot about it and you forgot to remove it from the outside world. So all these are dishing out information for the bad guys, right? As a threat actor, I will find anything possible that's relevant to you and very even likely be able to use that against you to get into your network. So if you look at, you know, from an adversary point of view, what they want to try to do is to recon, right? When they do reconnaissance, is to find everything they try to find publicly available, and then they find the best angle to get in. So in the next few slides, I will also talk about how this will be helping in terms of, you know, how different tools will fall under the same ASM core functions. All right, so I created this diagram to help most of us understand, you know, how ASM is a stepping stone, right? I know there are many people who ask, hey, you know, if I buy ASM, do I still need my vulnerability scanner? Do I still need all these validation tools, right? For the most part, an ASM is just to give you and discover information, right? That actually is a starting point for all these tools here. Like all the tools here we have is great, but it's no good if you don't know what you have, right? So basically how I defined it is today, ASM look for things outside of your organization perimeter, right? So everything that is beyond your walls, let the ASM do its job to find it for you. Now, I also put at the bottom here, as you can see, some brand open and dark web monitoring kind of services, right? Now, I put it there because I don't want us to get confused with that, because some many customers they think, oh, you know, ASM can find, you know, rogue sites that bad guys might be having it, right? But what ASM is trying to do is to help you account for things that you own. So there's a big difference, right? The brand open and dark web stuff are people who have spun up, right? That is relevant to you, but that you don't own. So this is the number one difference, and I do want to clarify that as well. So I kind of like draw up this diagram here so that we all understand where things are coming from, right? So when we talk about ASM, we are looking for things outside that you own, right? Brand monitoring, dark web, because, you know, when I speak to many customers, sometimes they get also confused together with, hey, you know, would my dark web find these things, right? The dark web monitoring only find things that may have been stolen from you, or maybe things that have been leaked out from you, right? That is in the bad guy's hands already. right? So this is the big difference, right? ASM to find things that is still in your possession, right? You still own them. So I hope this diagram kind of shows, and illustrate where things sit as well. All right. Now, another myth I would like to debunk here is also like how ASM works versus vulnerability scanners. So there are far too many times I have been talking to a lot of customers and also people in the industry. Sometimes they feel that, hey, with ASM, I can just replace my scanner, right? That is actually not true, because they are literally two different kind of functions, right? And ASM, basically, they not only cover the outside. First of all, attack surface monitoring or management, it has to be easy to set up, right? Because at the end of the day, you want to be able to give enough information so an ASM could go outside there and crawl everything that's relevant, right? So such things are like, you just have to specify maybe your domain name, right? Things that you own, and then maybe IP addresses, right? Email addresses. So with this, an ASM should be able to go out there and to find everything that's relevant to you, that you have, right? Like, for example, your DNS records, IP that you own, web server that's running behind it. So things like that will be picked up by an ASM. Compared to a vulnerability scanner, it is way more intrusive in terms of the scanning, right? It's very hard to set up. Vulnerability scanners are not easy. Sometimes they might even require an agent to deploy. All right, so these are some of the key things. For ASM, their coverage extend more than just CVE, right? This is very important, right? The ASM does not replace a vulnerability scanner in covering every single CVE out there, right? Which brings me to the item number 3. Because for ASM, they look at issues rather than vulnerabilities, right? Vulnerability scanners, they primarily look at CVEs, right? This is a CVE, this is a vulnerability, what can exploit it? That's what the vulnerability scanner do. So that's a major difference as well. And of course, the third point there, as I mentioned, an ASM may not cover every CVE on the entire planet, right? Because the ASM want to be quick and is able to pick up and fingerprint things really quickly. So they may not run all kinds of scans against all this coverage. So that is also another difference between these two things. Now, the fourth thing is definitely ASM is to find things that you don't know about. So the key thing is automated discovery, right? Vulnerability scanner, you literally have to specify what you're scanning, right? The subnet you're scanning, the host that you're scanning, and whatever that you know, you have to be able to scan what you know, so known assets, right? Some other differences is, again, ASM, external surface focus. Vulnerability scanners are mostly used for internal. And then last but not least, today, ASM can also function as a supply chain coverage, all right? What do I mean by that? So ASM can actually use to pick up your third-party, let's say vendors, suppliers, or just companies that an organization might work with, right? So for example, let's say I am an organization that I have a supplier call to do my HVAC system, called Honeywell or whatever, right? I can actually use an ASM to find out whether if Honeywell have their asset properly maintained as well, or what we know about what issues they have. So this is a key thing about ASM, right? Not only you can look at yourself, you can actually gauge some of the risk of your partners or suppliers or third-party vendors as well, right? So this is, I think, the key things I think will differentiate us very clearly between the ASM and the vulnerability scanner. All right, so now you'll be asking, and who in the organization will really actually use ASM, right? Does it help my malware analyst, or does it help my SOC guys sitting in there, doing the day-to-day work? So I kind of split it up into 4 kind of categories of consumption of such information. For those of you who are in the organization and definitely in your intelligence and red team, right? So being part of this team is where you want to be able to get any information you can get publicly about the organization before you conduct the red team exercise, right? Because red team will not be successful if you don't have upfront information. And how do you get the upfront information? Through attack surface management, right? You want to make sure you find all these things before the bad guy does, right? So you can pretend to be the bad guy to pick all this up before somebody else do, right? And then the needs is, of course, definitely you will need this information to validate security controls, automate all this assessment as well, being able to fed this information as you require in the intelligence and the red team. Now, when you move to the SOC leader, that is also where how you can scale and improve as well. Because some may say, hey, I sit in the SOC, I don't care what is sitting outside, that's beyond my scope. But the thing is, basically being able to understand what sits outside and may probably belong to you, definitely will help you streamline the process in the SOC as well, right? Because then you can free up your people to manage and understand all the things that you guys own, right? And not only the IPS and the host within the network, the SOC guy can also know about all these things that's sitting out there as well. So that maybe should they be monitored, right? Then they can also know that maybe should I have all these logs sent to the SIEM as well, in my SOC, so that these are all monitored. And if anything that can happen, it will trigger and people will know about it, right? So at the end of the day, in the SOC operations point of view, the more you know about the asset that you own, the more you can monitor better, right? As you move up the chain as well, then you get the CISO, right? In the point of the CISO, he may not care much about, if this host is sitting outside and may have a expired cert or may have some vulnerabilities. He may not care too much about the detailed technical issues. But more importantly is from the CISO point of view, he needs this information to make a judgment call and decision to say, hey, should we hire more people, right? As I mentioned earlier, if an ASM picks up 30% more things that you know about, maybe I might need 30% more people to handle these things because these are just sitting out there, right? And unmanaged. So this is important for information for the CISO to make as well, right? Basically, they have to understand if I need to grow my program, if I need to hire more people, and then of course, he needs to be able to align this to the business risk, right? Like, for example, okay, now that I know I have 4 servers that are still out there, right, that our engineers have left there. So what are the risks, right? Should I decommission them and should I close them up or what should I do, right? So this is all basically working with policies and together with all the relevant team that is maintaining the systems. So from the CISO point of view, definitely to help him manage the risk and to optimize, how much, to spend basically in a year. So these are all key people in your organization that will be consuming it. Now, the last part here will be the MSSP, all right? So because ASM is also very useful for service providers, right? I'm not sure if there are any of you guys here in this audience, but definitely from a point of view of the MSSP, they can use this to build way more value for their customers, right? So if you're offering a security service provider, right, you may be doing pen testing for your customers, you may be doing monitoring for your customers of their network, right? What if you can know more about them through an ASM for them? Basically, you tell, hey, Mr. Customer, I know you're busy, you outsource everything to me, but what if I can tell you more, that you have more system out there that you don't know about? And then these systems, I can also monitor for you. So from the MSSP point of view, not only they can create value, they can also, in a kind of way, increase the business coverage as well, right? Because now you're monitoring more things for the customer and which they should be monitored to begin with, right? So at the end of the day, it's all about having a large visibility, having strong APIs to connect to all these systems. And then of course, basically as I put here at the bottom here, finding new ways to sell more services, right? The more you know, the better pen testing you can do, the better red teaming you can do for the customer. So this is a quick overview of how all the different persona for attack surface management they can utilize and can help them in your environment. So I hope this is something useful that you can learn as well. So moving forward to our attack surface management, we have what we call some of the overview of how this should work, right? So like I mentioned earlier, an idea of how attack surface management should be able to be doing for you. If you're looking for an attack surface management solution, the key thing is, number one, as I mentioned earlier, the core value is to find, right? So which is the first part here. comprehensive extended enterprise visibility, right? What you want to do is to find things that you don't know, right? Discover them, inventory, and then help you investigate, right? So this is the core value number one. Number two is you don't want to only do this one time, right? I mean, you may find this thing went wrong and then say, oh, I'm done. But that's not the case, because you may have done something and find something now, but maybe a week later, somebody from another department, like maybe they're from the marketing side, they say, hey, I'll spin up a new instance, but we pay for some other services to do it. And then you don't know about it. So the key is continuously monitor it, right? And also to make sure that these assets that you know or do not know about, all the vulnerabilities are being covered as well. So basically the issues, the vulnerabilities are being looked at. And last but not least, at the end of the day, you want this attack surface management system to be able to help you operationalize into and your intelligence as well, right? At the end of the day, you want to be able to remediate all this, number one. Number two, give you alerts, if something new pops up, right? Or something has changed, popped up, right? Let's say maybe the web server, somebody changed the address and you didn't know about it. So all these things can be detected with an ASM, right? These are things that you want to be alerted on. And last but not least, the operationalization means integrating into the work stream, right? At the end of the day, all this stuff should be able to integrate to your existing workflow as well, right? It could be your ticketing system, it could be some case management system where you're able to look at the state of these issues. So this is how we usually define ASM and how these are the core functions that will help you to get a successful implementation. I do have some samples here, right? Basically to talk about, typically how assets can be discovered. So I did a quick print screen of how, in terms of what we call an assets, right? So in this case, as you can see, we also can call out like, APIs, domain names, web servers sitting behind it, IP addresses. So all these are things that can be picked up, right? And this could be in your entity that you do not know about, right? So the IP address belongs to you, the domain might belong to you, and what are the related issues that come with this as well. So being able to automatic inventory all this, right? Discover them, and then pull in and map it with all the issues that you have is the number one requirement for, basically understanding what kind of assets you have out there. So this is one sample of how it looks like. Now, another important feature, as I talked about earlier, is being able to identify issues, right? First, you find it. Then you find out if there are any issues with these things. So this is where typically, like I do a print screen again, right? You want to know about what you cover and what kind of issues that come with it. So you find the asset, find if they have any issues. So this is basically listing down, we found 1,600 issues with all the assets that they have, right? It could include information leakage. This could be a wrong configuration in WordPress, like for example here, right? It could also be like, as you see here, some of the CVEs that were, they were unpatched, right? We fingerprinted, we did a scan and say, hey, this, is susceptible to Adobe Code Fusion, arbitrary code execution, right? And things like that. So these are things that you want to be aware of and you want to be able to address it as well so that, they do not get breached, they do not get compromised. And that's where, accounts can be stolen from, even not within your own network. And then last but not least, what you want to be able to do is also to associate the relevant technology, right? Now you find the asset, but you may not know what exactly this asset do, right? Just because it's a web server, what kind of web server is it? What version is it, right? So you want to be able to also identify what kind of technology run behind this, right? So what we typically do is, once you find the IP address, what is the hosting, then you can find what kind of entity and what kind of technology that runs behind it, right? It could be maybe a Apache web server. It could also be an IIS server. So those are things that you want to have a good inventory about so that wow, after all this entity that I have, I realize that I actually have 100 technology to support, right? Then as a upper level management point of view, you may be able to start saying, hey, we have to start, consolidating this. We can't be buying so many technology out there. So this is to give you from the perspective as well. All right, so a little bit more information here is, I just want to share how before and after looks like, right? So typically, these are a lot of our customers where, today I've seen they struggle, right? Currently they just basically have a lot of inconsistent assets all over the place. They can't keep track, right? The visibility is poor, right? And basically they have zero way to enforce it, right? So that is definitely asking for trouble, right? Because when you are scattered all over the cloud, right? You have code, let's say one programmer, want to put it on GitHub, for example, one programmer want to put it somewhere else. Then you have placed all over the place that you can't keep track of, right? You have maybe legacy technology out there, like things could be, as I mentioned, an old FTP server or an old testing server that they have deployed out there. And then of course, last but not least, it could be unsanctioned services as well, right? Sometimes because an organization can be huge, there are so many business units, they might spin up their own services, right? They might spin up their own servers. So with that, unsanctioned service and device is definitely an issue. In talking about mobile device and cloud storage. So how the future looks like is, at the end of the day, I go back to my 3 steps again. You want to have comprehensive visibility, all conform to security policies, right? And last but not least, you can operationalize it in a threat intel so that you understand how this can be used in your environment.
Okay. SG, is that the last slide?
Sure. Is there any question at this point before I proceed?
Do you still have slides to present, SG?
Yes, I actually only have, this is pretty much the last two slides, and then we should be done.
Okay. You finish it, then we wrap up, then we discuss with the audience.
Yep, definitely we can do that, right? So last but not least, as I talked about here, at the end of the day, what we want to do is, basically I just have some shared use cases, which I actually have talked about earlier as well, right? Use case number 1, a lot of customers, they will say, Log4j, remember this, right? Just in December last year, it literally kind of spoiled most of our Christmas. Because of that, people panic and say, hey, I need to make sure this is covered. So the challenge is, the use case is, what you have in your network. You can do a quick scan and say, hey, these are all the Log4j that is vulnerable, right? But what you don't know is what's sitting outside. So this use case literally help in covering that part, where things could be outside. There are many web servers out there that could have the Log4j exploit that could, target the vulnerability. So some of the key use cases. The second key use case is, I had said this earlier before, you have business unit in your organization who spin up easily, right? AWS instance, I can set one instance up. This is to do a promotion for the marketing department and nobody know about it, right? And this is exactly why you want to have an ASM to pick it up, to find things that may have, kind of skip through the policies, because this doesn't require IT guy, right? I don't need the IT guy to set up an AWS cloud instance to host my promotional items, right? So this is where things slip through the cracks. And then the other part is, as I said, use case 3 and 4, basically acquisition kind of environment where when you buy a company, you want to be able to know the complete list of IT assets, right? Both in and out. So that will be use case number 3. Use case number 4, I mentioned this earlier, because of the COVID-19, pandemic, people work from home. There are more services spun up today to address that include cloud, VPN, so on and so forth, right? So these are all key use cases, I think, help you understand and to use it. Definitely something that I would think will be useful, right? Oh, I got one more last slide here, and then I want to get into some discussion and question as well. Been about half an hour since I've been speaking. So taking away on ASM is, these are the few things I think, I had like the last 15 slides and I kept talking the last 30 minutes, but I wish, if you go home today, these are the few things that you want to know, right? Number 1, to understand the different function and difference of ASM versus VA or some other tools, right? So as I addressed early, this is what you want to make sure that ASM, again, I might put it in a loose quote unquote way, a recon tool, right? Find the stuff before the bad guy do. That's the key, right? The one who get there first wins. Identify and remove sprawl. Basically, you want the tool to basically find it, account for it, and remove everything that doesn't belong to you, and just remove the risk. Last but not least, you want to be able to monitor this as you go along, right? This is not a one-time job. You don't do a one-time assessment and call it a day, right? This needs to be happening all the time, like a monitoring kind of function. And then of course, that's where you can adhere to the security policy. You can catch it when that happens. So having said that, I think that's the end of my presentation today, right? Before I end it, so maybe we can take some questions here. I do have one slide on some links to download, our stuff, but I'll take some question now. So
Okay, thank you very much, SG, for that very comprehensive presentation. No, so while listening to you a while ago, so I have many things that I realized because we in the service provider space are also dealing with these challenges that you mentioned a while ago. But what's really important here, and I want to highlight, is again, going back to the basics, right? As we discussed on previous cases, what do we need in cybersecurity? It boils down again to our number one main objective, which is visibility. Diba? So lagi natin sinasabi yun dito sa Kwentuhang Cybersecurity. There are a lot of topics that we discuss that pertains to overall visibility of the infrastructure, because you cannot protect what you do not see, diba? So that's the basic, no? So having said that, with the visibility that we have in our infrastructure, then we apply different tools or different security controls for continuous monitoring, and then eventually operationalizing it, right? So, but before anything else, let's greet our VP Mia, our guest or our audience for today, starting from Denise Simone. Hi, Denise. Pamela de la Cruz Serna, thank you for attending. Max Perez, Jules Aribon, Asli Gono, Riz Balastro is always here. Oh, a good friend, Joey Alba. Joey Alba is my former office mate in one of the SOC provider here in the Philippines. Lorraine Cruz, Marian Alarcon, yeah, President Jen of NCR is also here. Thank you, our ever pretty President Jen. One of our office mates before ni VP Mia, si Romel Saez. I think he's from Dubai now. So, Coach Romel, good afternoon to you, no? He's here as well, no? So, thank you for attending this afternoon session, no? So, what could you say, VP Mia, about the discussion of SG, right? It's really interesting that, we know this attack surface management.
Yes, actually, very interesting. And as we know, when SG actually showed the 4 use cases, I'm sure many of us can relate to that, right? The log4j, which he mentioned, and also, because it's very easy nowadays to just spin up resources in any public cloud. It's very hard as well, no? So, and sometimes the cybersecurity team is not even aware that other groups are, spinning up resources and not knowing that there are security vulnerabilities already. So it's really very important that we know because if we don't know all of our assets, then how can we protect it, right? From the very beginning, we're always saying visibility is very important in cybersecurity. And SG actually highlighted that as well earlier.
Yeah. We have a one comment here, VP Mia, no, from our audience. Art Rob. Is this Rob? Yeah. So I think
it's
he's
very
interesting. Yeah, she's very familiar with the solution that we are discussing today. So she is saying that, I've been doing POCs on this and even put it in his ebook, no? So Expanse, Reposify, Psycognito are good to check to aside from Mandiant for fair comparison. Again, he's saying Shodan monitoring is the cheapest for startup as a tool. Else, just utilize Spiderfoot or Kali Linux tool if the org chart don't have a budget. So thank you very much, Art, for the input. No? So at least we know, I mean, if you have a budget, you could use this tool. If you not, you could use the other tools that are available there. No?
Right. But maybe VP Alex, if we can have Sunny. Sunny, would you like to comment on that?
Yeah. So I guess the message ng VP Mia is while there's a lot of available tools out there, but the most important thing, if I can share, it really starts with the objective. It's the business objective. What are those outcomes that you really want to achieve that aligns to the business objective? While having visibility is very important, it's also important that you want to have that control, right? So always try to put yourself, how the attackers or those threat actors are seeing you, right? So to become paranoid. And these are just some strategies that we are sharing that allows for every organization to have a more resilient security infrastructure.
Yeah,
So,
agree.
yeah.
In addition to Sonny's comment as well, at the end of the day, I think like you mentioned, right, today there are actually quite many tools out there, right? And we have seen like you have open source tools, even like Shodan can do it, it's some of the basic stuff. And of course there are some paid tools, of course, like our technology and what was mentioned earlier. But at the end of the day, I think it's important that, because especially for SMB, I think the question hasn't come out yet. For the SMB, I think, hey, I'm a small shop. I can't afford to hire one guy just to sit there and use the open source tool to find stuff, right? So that is actually some of the challenge as well. So you want to be able to make it easy, right? I want to be able to put just my domain name and just spider it, right? So that's why there might be different kind of tiers of tools, right? Some is to find it, discover it, find the issues, and give you a remediation path, right? So you want to be able to I want to get straight to address it rather than, maybe a larger organization, sometimes they do have a large team. So they have guys who can do the research, do the findings, and of course, provide their own remediation tool as well. So as I mentioned, we will be able to also address to the SMB market to be able to jump straight onto this and cover their assets outside.
Yeah, agree. So this is, I think, a complementary solution that you could put, whether you are a service provider, big enterprise, small enterprise, or even SME. No, so this is applicable. As I shared a while ago, no, kami nga sa telco in PLDT Smart, we have a very huge infrastructure. No, imagine the nightmare that we have discovering all our assets as number one. And then the attack surface that we have is very huge, right? So the infra that we have is on a large scale. So we have a fixed network, mobile network, corporate network, public-facing assets, right? So that is really hard for us to do it. So as I mentioned a while ago, in our practice, we some of our teammates are here, like Bani Hunsay from our special operation group. We identify at first the attack entry points that we have in the infrastructure, no? So we identify each infrastructure and what are the attack entry points that we are exposed to. And then after which, what we did is, from these attack entry points, what are the possible? We need to think about like the hackers or like the adversaries. No? What are the possible TTPs or tactic procedures that they could utilize to be able to penetrate us, right? And from those data that you have, maybe you could get it from your as SG saying, you could do vulnerability assessment, penetration testing. But at the end of the day, what's important here is you could complement all these tools and technology to be able to strengthen and fortify your defenses. What do you think, BP Oka, Vice Chair Oka?
Yeah, no, it's a very good discussion. No? I think we talk a lot about SMEs. We talk a lot about manual. But if you look at what the ASM actually provides a lot of these companies now from big to small is automation.
Yeah.
And simplification of the discovery of unknown assets that could be known to all the attackers already. No? So I think we have this notion that the attackers are much more visible of the threats that we currently face, and this is actually bringing the balance, or tipping the balance to the side of the defender by understanding what the attackers see and much more. So we can potentially be ahead of the attacker, and which is the biggest objective for any defender. How can we be ahead of the attacker? And this is one of the tools that allows us to be ahead of the threat actors. And I think this is also a good time for us to point out that this is one of the tools that really connect the dots within the SOC, right? So I think we discussed earlier on around continuous validation of security control. So, but our speaker was saying that even if you have all the tools, if in the controls okay, but there's an unknown asset, then it's a vulnerability. And then he also mentioned, I think this is along the discussion of our prep around the issues and vulnerabilities, no? And this could be related to which tools you're gonna be using or making a decision to buy. No? So is it a manual stuff, very simple enough that will help you fix one of these things, or it is something that's automated and actually not only gives you the vulnerabilities, but surface the issues that you have. No? So from vulnerabilities to issues. So maybe my question is the vulnerability versus issues, and why is ASM helps organizations to surface not only the vulnerabilities but the issues as well. Any comment?
SG.
Right. Okay. Right. So because you see, the thing is, vulnerability is very technical in many people's eyes, right? When you talk about vulnerability, it's always CVE, right? Oh, I got the patch, I got the exploit and all that stuff. But I think most of the information that the threat actor can find extend more than the CVE, because all it takes is somebody who forgot to or maybe they have read full access in the AWS cloud. It could be a misconfiguration. So the issues is actually a bigger superset of things that you want to be addressing, rather than just focusing on the technical things. Because most of the time, like I mentioned, I've seen so many customers who use ASM suddenly found, oh, I didn't know I have a FTP server that was still running, back from 4 years ago when we had a project. So this is what I call an issue, right? It's actually not a vulnerability, but it's just that this FTP server is just, dishing out information.
Great.
Yeah, so to that, I have a follow-up question, SG. And there are several things that caught my attention. So like third-party risk or supply chain risk management, SWAN. And another one is sharing information for the governance risk and compliance teams, right? So when you say issue, because when you say issue in risk management terminology, it means something that has already happened and could cause an audit finding. So is that something that, how you define it as well?
Yes, in terms of the governance, this is definitely to help address that, before, it gets worse. So that's why, from the governance team, the security policy team, there's always going to be the policy and then the enforcement, right? And because of the gap, people get caught for not having the enforcement there. So this is definitely also can help with the enforcement of, make sure that the security policy is always followed, right? If I'm the marketing department, I say I want to have, a new cloud service. Sometimes you just spin it up and you bypass all the change control and all the approval as well. So this is to make sure that that it's also covered if things slip through the crack.
Actually, I agree with the comment of our vice chair that this really stitched together the end to end. If you look at the end to end cybersecurity operation, right? So it stitched together the operationalization of the SOC, the threat intelligence. That's why I want to ask SG, how do you integrate this solution? For example, if I have threat intel feed, if I have other sources of intelligence in my infrastructure, so is this integratable to those kind of information or intelligence that is already in the SOC?
All right. So definitely. So that's why in the third part of my my explanation was about how this can streamline the workflow, right? And ASM by itself, or if you find something out there by itself, it doesn't help you much when you have so many to deal with, right? At the end of the day, it's all about integrating to your existing security infrastructure and your ecosystem as well. So for example, right, you want to be able to find this thing that you didn't know about as an alert or as a ticket, and then this will go into your main ticketing system. So somebody is there to address it, right? So that's why I did mention, an ASM system should have a very robust API. so that you can fully integrate it to your ticketing system. Like, some customers, they put it into ServiceNow, right? And some other things to make it so that you actually have the whole workflow set up. As I mentioned earlier, and also the chair mentioned earlier as well, it's all about having an integrated workflow. Because if you just have a standalone tool doing what it's doing, and then that's where the gap comes in, because it doesn't get followed through all the way, right? So what if I find it? Nobody's going to fix it. But the key thing is having it, integrated into the whole ecosystem so that this thing is always flagging red, right? Like also to Sheila's question about enforcement, because if somebody find it and nobody actually make an action on it to fix it, it doesn't quite help. So at the end of the day, the whole ASM works very well if you have everything all integrated. And most ASM today, they have them function with API. They can actually integrate all the way, in the ticketing system, the status, is it resolved? Is it still open? Is this mine? Is this not mine? Is it owned by the organization? So these are all things that I think is very important as part of the whole chain of the whole cycle.
Yeah. To know the unknowns, right? So we have a good news pala to our audience. By the way, I saw our good friend Angelo de Guzman from Cisco just watching us. So hi G, good afternoon to you. Welcome to Kwentuhang Cybersecurity. So we have ano pala ngayon, VP Mia, no? Yung paayuda natin. So VP
Yes.
Shi, yeah?
Actually,
So-
si VP Sheila, nagrereklamo na eh. Sabi niya, very generous daw siya, pero 2 weeks na tayong walang paayuda.
Yeah.
So, today, we have simple questions for everyone, no? And maybe Sunny and SG will help us later with the answers. So, VP Sheila, you wanna ask the first question?
Surely. Okay, so what is the format of the answer first, VP Mia?
#PixPro and then the answer. Same as
No more emoji,
no more
Okay.
emoji, yes.
Okay, first question. Can ASM replace my vulnerability assessment tool or scanner?
Right. This is definitely a question I've seen asked all the time, is because, and I
No,
have addressed it as
Oh,
well.
hold on.
No,
SG,
don't answer SG.
We'll
Yeah.
let our friends
our audience
first.
answer.
I got too
let's see
excited.
if they're
Go ahead.
listening to you.
SG, you're not qualified for the ayuda.
These are leaked questions.
Yes. Oh, we have an answer. Am I right? Lorenzo Anda is the first one.
Yep.
Okay, congratulations. So,
Yes, but he answered yes. But is that the correct answer?
hold on. Okay, yes. Let's ask SG first. What's the answer?
All right. So an ASM, as I mentioned earlier in the table when I was very excited just now, basically it doesn't actually replace the entire function, right? Because it is actually a more complementary tool as a stepping stone before a VA is used. So ideally, you want to use ASM to find what you want to scan first, then you use a VA to do the scanning.
Right. So the answer is no. Am I
Correct.
right? Okay. So Lorenzo, I'm so sorry. Our winner for the first question is Fernando Martires.
Fernando, congratulations.
Congrats.
Okay, let's go to our second question. Our second question is, can an ASM solution discover cloud services such as AWS or Azure? #PixPro and your answer. Parang madali yung questions natin, no? Answerable by yes or no. Okay, we have people answering. We have different answers. So maybe we can also request SG again to provide us the answer.
Maybe.
Right.
Not maybe.
Are we ready for the answer? All right.
Yes.
So yes. So for cloud services, the answer is yes. Right. Most of the ASM today, they can support all these popular ones like Google Cloud, AWS, and as well as Azure. Right. These are some of the more popular services out there that are supported in most of the ASM coverage.
Oh, thank you, SG. VP Alex, you want to announce the winner? I think you know who the winner is. The winner is a good friend. His answer is #PixPro-yes. So our winner is Mr. Angelo de Guzman. G, congratulations. Okay, for our third question, VP Alex. You're on mute. Sorry.
Sorry. Third question. Sorry, I'm on mute. So question number 3, again, #PixPro and then your answer. Typically, how are integrations to other platforms supported in ASM? So how do we integrate? So kakatanong ko lang kay kay SG kanina, and he answered that one, no? So what is the typical integration? And this is also the typical integration for any other systems anyway. Very conventional. Okay, are you seeing answers now?
Yes. What is the answer first? SG?
All right. So the answer is actually is quite simple with a 3-letter word, right? I mean, more like a 3-letter. So at the end of the day, it just requires a compatible API, the application programming interface. So that will be the answer.
Right. Okay. Congratulations, Jennifer Arce. Martin.
Jennifer, congratulations.
Congratulations. Yes, there's a comment. Actually, there's a comment from Press Jen from NCR earlier. She said, visibility, amen. And then there's also a comment from Frederick Gonda. He said, minimize blind spots. Agree. And then Press Jen also commented that Angelo de Guzman should not be qualified because he's a rich guy anyway. Comment on that.
Maganda yung can I itong minimize blind spot kay Frederick Honda. So this is potentially the difference between a more modern ASM and the others, the idea is when you get to do the manual stuff to discover, it's really minimizing, but what our objective, like what Sunny mentioned, is really around eliminating the blind spots. So I think that's kind of the difference between either eliminating or minimizing, because if you do manual, and then you cannot be keeping up with the way I think the environment of many organizations, which are really evolving like at cloud speed, sabi nga nila, di ba? Cloud speed. I mean, think about the DevOps teams that may never inform the security team about new
assets, assets.
And so modern app that has not been tested yet, and so on, because there's a lot of challenge from the business to deliver an application for a certain product launch, etc. So these are the things that we really can help in eliminating the blind spots.
And it's really hard, Vice Chair, to keep up with the ever-growing assets. No, so you are adding assets, you are adding different parts of the infrastructure that you cannot monitor naman every day. That we add this one, we add this one, right? So that's a challenge, really.
Yeah. And yun pa yung isang presentation niya, it's how you can increase the productivity of your SOC, with all of these integrations and automation. So you don't want your SOC team to be overly staffed, and then in the end they leave, and if everything is manual, it's also so difficult to replace the resources if it is very manual. I mean, maybe they can document a certain extent, but updating the documentation is even very challenging. But this ASM allows you to actually have a repository of this information updated every minute, every second, and microsecond.
And the manual way is also depend on the analyst, because a lot of the time, right, some good analysts, they can find good stuff, yes, but like you say, he have his own preferred own tool set, right? It's like a carpenter, right? I love to do different things. I have different kind of tools. So the only challenge is if the guy leaves, then the process is gone. His favorite tool is gone. So you don't get consistency there, in terms of covering. And definitely, the resource is definitely very, very difficult, right? Like you mentioned earlier, it's not so easy to find these guys and to keep them. And at the same time, you make sure they have to be there to monitor, right? New things get spun up every day, right? You want to be able to be there to catch it, when things come about. And I think only automation can pretty much pick this up.
Yep, agree. Automation is the key.
Yes, and maybe
yes, who's that?
I just wanted to add, there's a very good point that BP Oka has mentioned. It's either you minimize or you eliminate. Those are outcomes actually. But I think another factor that needs to be really considered is what's driving those results is not really on the technology piece, but it's really the science behind, the intelligence behind that, the software that does all the analysts, right? That analyzes everything. And the good thing about putting this kind of new technologies, new strategies, as the old saying goes, there's no one one size does not fit all, right? And sometimes the right approach, precisely as you have mentioned, in the environment of PLDT and Smart, that's a complex environment. And sometimes the best approach is you have the best of breed, right?
Yeah.
Who are those that are agnostic, that can work with different technologies, but still allow you to achieve that outcome, but being driven by the software, the intelligence behind, and the expertise behind that. And I think our users now are very intelligent. They go to that due diligence and they ask for proof points. Who have you done it? How did you do it, right? And what's the result that we were able to achieve out of that? So I think I just wanted to add that it's also important to really evaluate the technology behind the intelligence behind that.
Yeah. Thank you, Son.
Intelligence, President has a very good question, and I'm not sure if SG will be able to answer this, but do you see the attack surface, Philippine landscape in particular, to be more manageable or more challenging? Do you have any view?
All right. So I think it's not only affecting Philippines itself. I think generally in Southeast Asia, in this region, one of the challenges, because the adoption of cloud is so quick, right? The adoption of all these new services is so fast. So because of them picking so quickly, I would definitely see, even in Philippines, right? You talk about how fast businesses spin up all these apps, all these services. It's going to be a big space in the Philippines to cover in this context, just like many parts of Southeast Asia as well.
Yeah, but slowly, SG, from our observation, customers are now looking at different ways on how they can consume that. And you presented that in one of the slides. There's that MSSP model where you let the partner who has the competence to be able to do that for the customer. So
and value add as well to the whole scenario, right? Because
that's another aspect on how other organizations are looking at it. They see the value, but they don't have the skill sets. It's not their core competence, but there's an option for them to still avail that through a partner that has the skill sets and expertise to do that.
Kaya nga pwede ito para sa mga SMEs. So in the Philippines, we have like 300,000 SMEs, needing to be protected, but again, sabi nga kanina that some of these solutions are really expensive, and MSSP is another option, so that we can actually package all these really very good technologies in SME in a box or SOC in a box, things like that, so that it's affordable by so many SMEs, in the Philippines. So that they would not resort to just buying this is good enough, because good enough is not good enough anyway. With very good, very great attackers out there, with so much exposure on automation, advanced technologies, and things like that. So yeah, that's why SMEs in the Philippines are also exposed, because again, as you said, they cannot buy all the technologies that they need, just like the bigger enterprises. No, so we're really trying to look for that solution that will be affordable and consumable. No, as I always say, how can we democratize a truly modern cybersecurity solution for the SOC, even for SMEs and SMEs? And I think this is what the Philippines is looking for, to really improve, as we say, and better protect the PH cyberspace.
Cyberspace. Right? Agree, Vice Chair. I agree. Again, yeah, ang sarap ng kwentuhan.
Maganda yung discussion, ano?
Maganda yung discussion, sarap yung kwentuhan. But again, we reached the end of the session, no? So again, it's nice talking again to our speakers, to our guest Mandiant and our partner now. So maybe we could ask for a final round of messaging or thoughts, SG, for our audience. What can you say or what you could recommend to them? So the floor is yours, SG.
Thank you. So before we wrap this up again, as I mentioned earlier today, we just here to try to share awareness how ASM is not a scary monster, right? It's definitely something that we can help a lot of organization, both in Philippines and parts of Southeast Asia as well. And at the same time, this is also to give another perspective that, like what Sunny said earlier, from a MSSP perspective, I think this can definitely cascade down to like you mentioned, right, that 300,000 SMEs in the Philippines, and they will not be spending like millions and millions to just protect themselves. So definitely from an MSSP point of view, they can see value in providing services to them, right, helping them at a smaller scale, but still giving them the actual protection what a big company will get as well. So that's definitely my takeaway. And secondly, again, this is something that I think internally we can always cover. Just we want to be able to see what the bad guy sees. So again, going back to my tagline, this is something that we definitely help to help you to discover what you don't know about. I think that's the key messaging. And then of course, the other things will be basically following up with monitoring. So it's not a one-time thing. Always remember, ASM is not, I do it one round, I find what I have, because things are always coming up all the time. And then last but not least, make sure that you can actually somewhat have integrated it into your workflow as well, so you can manage it and actually fix the issue rather than just I found it and then I don't know what to do with it.
Yeah,
so with that said, I do have a quick slide here to just show. We do have a free tool here that I think will be of use for today. Can you guys see my link that I will be sharing here?
Not yet, SG.
All right. So this is just a quick link. So we do have free tool. Basically, it's a freemium edition of what we provide today.
We cannot see SG, sir. Oh, there.
Right. It should be coming up. All right. Apologies. All right. So this is a quick link here that you guys can click. Basically, you can get access. Again, this is a freemium edition. We have our Intel and our ASM. Definitely for, as you mentioned, small businesses out there who want to take a look, right? I just want to see my footprint outside of my house. What I have left outside, what do I own outside? This can do a quick assessment for you as well. So I'll leave this here on the screen for a while, and then you guys can take a look. I mean, other than that, I think I've spoken enough for today, and thank you very much for inviting us to share this ASM here, and hopefully we can build some awareness and make this educational as well.
Yeah, our pleasure, SG. Sunny, final words. Maybe our audience here are working from companies that need your solution.
Yeah, well, first of all, I'd like to thank you, BP Alex, BP Oka, BP Mia, BP Sheila, to the chairman. Thanks for this opportunity. I hope we were able to, do a good mind share and be able to share new technologies, perhaps a strategy that can be aligned to our customers or users' enhancement strategy that they're embarking on. So we do have other capabilities as well. But that's something that we can also share later on if we be given another opportunity to do a mind share on that. But I'd like to thank. I hope our viewers today were able to get some good key takeaways, right? New inputs, and then I think this is a really good platform, if I may say. It really aligns to the objective of this organization, the advocacy of PixPro, and that's the whole intent of this session. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sunny. VP Sheila, any final thoughts?
Yes. So before my final thoughts, I just want to thank Mandiant, care of Sonny and SG for being our latest technology partner. So we forgot to inform our viewers that they are our latest technology partner. So thank you again for the support. My thoughts with what SG shared, I'm always an advocate for technology to improve the processes, making it mechanical. So it's a good thing that you're also open to cater to small and medium businesses, because that's really the challenge that we always see, right? And in order for us to have victory in this cyber warfare, we also need to protect those small and medium-sized businesses. So thank you again, and have a good night.
Thank you, VP Shi. Vice Chair, final thoughts on your side.
Okay, so yung napakaganda talaga. So thank you, Sunny and SG. If you look at the Gartner cybersecurity adoption life cycle, the ASM is nasa sa una, so which means that we were still at the cusp of getting adopted by a lot of organizations, and it's a very good news also for all the PixPro members, because they're getting firsthand really good information about ESM. Because even with many of the customers that I meet almost every week, every day, there's not a lot of discussion around ASM. So this is a good, I think, for all the members of PixPro to be exposed of this one of the newest technologies in the cybersecurity realm. So I'm very sure it's going to be embraced by more and more organizations, and so this is really very good topic and session that the membership has really experienced today. So maraming salamat, Mandiant, and kumusta kay Kevin?
Thank you, Vice Chair.
Paring Ken.
Kevin Mandiant. Thank you, Vice Chair. VP Mia, final thoughts on your side.
Yes. First of all, thank you so much, Sunny and SG. This will not be the last. We'll definitely have another session. But for me, my takeaway is that businesses today demands technology to be as dynamic as and as fast as possible. That's the demand from businesses, whether small, medium, or large enterprises, right? And tools such as Mandiant will be able to help us, in knowing what we have, knowing our assets, and for us to scale and improve productivity and efficiency. So thank you so much, and we look forward to our next session.
Yes, thank you. For me, my final words: technology and tools are very good, and going to automation, etc. But at the end of the day, it's the again cybersecurity mindset, the end-to-end perspective, how you apply these tools, this capability, to be able to fortify and strengthen your defenses. And as technologies teaches this, like the ASM, as mentioned by VP Oka, so we're naman at PixPro, we want to teach the technology partner, the ecosystem partner, for our membership. So maybe, I don't know, Sunny and SG could also give trainings on their technology specific to Mandiant naman on our next training sessions. So that will be very, very useful for our membership, Sunny, and for our audiences today. So with that, again, it's a weekend. Happy weekend to everyone. Again, as we always say, in cybersecurity, happy lang,
walang weekend.
Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you. Thank you, SG. Thank you, everybody.
Bye. Bye.
Bye-bye.
The recording has